All right, everyone, it's time for a little bit of controversy here, so we can talk about the alt-right, or the remnant of what used to be, or I'm not even sure what term they would use. They should be calling themselves, I guess, Nazbol at this point, considering some of the shit they're saying. And I'm not going to name names here, although you can probably guess who I'm talking about. And it's more than one person, but the major figures within what used to be the dissident right appear to have abandoned the concept of being on the right at all. And at this point sound, in some cases, arguably more like just racist communists. It's become almost a joke because, you get these people who 5 years ago or 4 years ago were arguing for limiting state power because the state was abusive. And an ethno-nationalist and a libertarian have the same idea for different reasons with regards to state power. Because the state is abusive. And I think even liberals and leftists at this point understand this. It's just that everyone has a different sort of pitch about why it's corrupt, the state, and why it needs to be reformed and how to do that. Like the left says, well, more taxes on billionaires because if we grow state power for some reason it won't abuse us anymore. Libertarians would say reduce state power. They should have less money, less scope, and so forth. And you have all of these different ideologies. Someone who's more ethno-nationalistic would say, well, we can have a libertarian-style community, but I want only 90% white people or something like that. Or you have a black nationalist movement or something. But if you listen lately, more and more of these individuals, and I commented on this years ago, actually, that they were moving in this direction. I made a video, I think, in 2018 talking about how they had begun to abandon their anti-censorship sort of less statist principles and begun to adopt the idea of censorship. And I think this has even seeped to some degree into pieces of alt tech. You've got this with Gab. Gab, if you look at their Twitter page, looks more like it's run by authoritarians than people who are principled in the free speech sense. And I know the idea is, well, it's our platform, we can do what we want, that's fine. But the philosophical underpinnings have changed. Let's put it that way. And again, I use Gab. I have no problem with it. It's a valuable site to use, but I do take exception to some of the things that its leadership happens to say, especially on Twitter. And I put it out. It's no secret, by the way, that I feel that way. So it's, I'm not telling anything out of school, so to speak. Anyway, if we look at the old right, though, the old new right, we could call them, of 2015, 2016, the initial principles have been largely abandoned, and at this point, basically, the summation now is, well, yeah, we do want communism, low libertarians. It's very funny to get mocked by people whose ideology is considerably smaller and less accepted than your own. It becomes almost self-satirical at some point. They've begun to sound like communists, though. Like, well, we do want more welfare. Yes, it's great. Like, arguing for the lockdowns, like, my 401ks, my stonks. The economy is just paper. Haha, money printer go brr. And arguing for an indefinite lockdown like the state is being benevolent. We need to save people from dying and doing moral grandstanding, too, in the process. Literally, though, you want grandma to die line that you hear from fucking Hillary Clinton fans. And this is now associated with what used to be the alt-right, but you can't really call it right anymore. It doesn't resemble a conservative movement. To the point where, I realize that the globalism of conservative Inc. is always problematic. I would agree. For instance, I don't want to give money to any foreign nation except in time of severe crisis if it's necessary, and then it should come with certain strings attached. In the case, though, of what used to be, again, the alt-right, that has taken a back seat. Like, even the idea of, border security is spoken of less than the idea of giving people welfare. Like, there seems to be an appreciation for fucking Bernie Sanders, of all people, among some of these individuals, and it appears the old dissident right became schismatic. Here's what happened. As long as it was amorphous and disorganized and was about making memes and chuckling as the world burned, it was stable, because it was a chaos movement to begin with, a mimetic anomaly, you could say, in the occult sense as well. I wrote a book on this fucking topic. As soon as there was an attempt to organize, by people who wanted more power and leverage for themselves, not saying in a malevolent sense, but they attempted to organize things after their vision of what this dissident right should be, it destabilized because multiple people tried to do that and they were at variance. And so it got to the point where I was debating ethno-nats and they couldn't even explain to me how to create their ethno-state. Like, in the sense of the United States, and I questioned them, and I got so many different ideas. Like, one person would say, will incentivize people to leave, will offer them money. And then I asked, well, when 95% of those people don't, then what do you do next? Oh, I don't know, but I think we should give the carrot before the stick. So you get that proposition. Some said balkanization, which is nuts. Some said, the idea is, oh, I love the United States so much. I want the United States to do well. Let's rip it apart. Let's adopt communism. And it's just like, it's insane. Somebody would say, well, we'll have a purge. Somebody would say, well, it needs to be purely just white people in my ethno-state. And another person would say, well, it's okay if there are some tokens. It's like, it began to destabilize because you've got all of these different sub-ideologies cloistered after these sub-individuals who are all sort of competing in the ideological sense, creating offshoots and going into purity spirals. The left is having this problem. And Razorfist had a great video, I think a couple months ago. He invokes Ayn Rand in the video, and I know that's something that'll make Ethnonat shriek when you bring up Ayn Rand. I'm not a huge fan, but this is one topic that she discussed that I absolutely agree with, and Razorfist pointed this out. The idea that the left would dissolve into smaller and smaller identity groups because of the way it politicked, essentially. That these groups would get smaller and smaller. The idea of a left-wing hegemon coming and sweeping away the old conservatives and we'll have leftism forever actually can't happen because these groups end up destroying one another. So you have smaller and smaller special interest groups to the point of near individualism in some cases. When you have 20 different pronouns before your name to describe your particular sub-ideology, it becomes very, very difficult to organize without debating constantly. This was a problem in Spain during the era of Franco. The anarchists and communists were doing okay as long as they were fighting side by side. Then they began to disagree because they got decadent and they destroyed one another and they fucked up. It became a big problem for them. And they butchered one another, almost as much as Franco liked killing people as well. Very interesting times. But the alt-right is actually, in a way, proving the horseshoe theory that it so derides. Because, again, you've got this... Originally, it was more libertarian. It was more like, we want to reform the state, we want to be left alone, we want to secure the borders, we shouldn't be, censorship was a big issue for people who are more ethno-nationalistic years ago. Now they don't even focus on that. Now they're like, oh, censorship's okay. Yeah, it's okay, it's a private platform, let them abuse me. And it's very, very funny how that has actually happened. Now, that, again, is maybe a lesser ideology within what used to be the dissident right. I'm not saying that that's common across all people. But it's increasing in commonality. And I've watched it happen for several years now and warned openly about this in 2018 and was paid no heed. It's the same as the left ignores me. I could have predicted, and often did, many of the problems they're facing right now. But they're too stupid to realize it. And as far as the dissident right goes, I think that some of the people that are sort of part of that thing, and some of them have sort of wandered off into the hinterlands, like haven't heard from Tara McCarthy lately, have you? Some of these individuals are highly intelligent in an academic sense, many of them well-spoken, but when you get to the point where an ideology that grew out of a libertarian sentiment against big tech and against state power, whether or not ethno-nationalistic in the racial and ethnic sense, simply a referendum on that society that was beginning to become tyrannical. When you take that and then you start pitching communism or some variant far leftism to people, where you're like, well, yeah, welfare's fine. Oh, yeah, censorship can be okay. Yeah, we should, Bernie Sanders is an okay dude. That's a real good way to rip your movement apart, I would posit. And over the coming years, I think you're going to see that continue. So, I mean, when I get called a lolbertarian by people whose, ideology is beginning to crumble away, and increasingly more of them are just becoming far leftists, yeah, I mean, what am I supposed to say, dude? That's about all. Peace out.